Ambassador Jiwoo stood at the center of the Grand Assembly Hall and tried not to let her frustration show. The hall was enormous, with tall ceilings that seemed to stretch forever. Hundreds of alien species filled the seats around her, their advanced technology glowing and humming. Some had multiple arms, others floated in the air. A few looked almost human, but most were completely foreign. She had been speaking for 10 minutes. 10 minutes about humanity's offer to help protect the galaxy. 10 minutes that felt like hours because she could see the smirks on their faces. Some weren't even trying to hide their amusement. As I was saying, Jiwoo continued, keeping her voice steady, humanity would like to contribute warships to the Assembly's peacekeeping fleet. We believe our vessels could provide valuable support in patrol operations and emergency response. A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. It wasn't loud, but it was there. The kind of polite laughter that was somehow worse than open mockery. High Counselor Vrexus rose from his seat. He was tall, with dark blue skin and 4 eyes that gleamed with intelligence and arrogance. His species, the Voth, had been part of the Assembly for over 2,000 years. They considered themselves the foundation of galactic civilization. Ambassador Jiwoo, Vrexus said, his voice carrying easily across the hall, we appreciate your enthusiasm. Truly we do. But let us be realistic here. He waved one hand and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed images of human warships. The vessels looked small and simple compared to the massive dreadnoughts that other species used. The human ships were dark gray, angular, and covered in strange protrusions that most species didn't recognize. These are your military vessels? Vrexus asked, not bothering to hide his amusement. They appear to be, how should I put this delicately, primitive. We have cargo haulers with more firepower, more laughter. This time it was louder. Jiwoo felt heat rise to her face, but she kept her expression neutral. Appearances can be misleading, High Counselor. Our ships are designed for efficiency and purpose, not decoration. Of course, Vrexus said with a dismissive gesture. But you must understand the Assembly's peacekeeping operations require real military power. We face threats from pirates, raiders, and hostile species. Your ships might be adequate for protecting your own small territory, but in galactic terms, he shrugged, we wouldn't want to put your people in danger with tasks they cannot handle. A delegate from the Karathi species, a reptilian race with green scales, spoke up. Perhaps humanity should focus on trade and cultural exchange. Not every species needs to be a military power. There is no shame in that. The words were meant to be kind, but they stung more than the open mockery. Jiwoo had heard variations of this speech for 3 years now. Ever since humanity joined the Assembly, they had been treated like children. Well-meaning children perhaps, but children nonetheless. I see, Jiwoo said quietly. Then the Assembly declines our offer. Not declines, Vrexus said smoothly. Let us say, tables it for future consideration, when humanity has had more time to develop its capabilities. Jiwoo bowed slightly, the human gesture of respect that the Assembly had come to recognize. She returned to her seat among the other human delegates. As she sat down, she could feel their anger and frustration. It matched her own. The Assembly moved on to other business. Trade agreements, border disputes, the usual political theater. Jiwoo barely listened. Her mind was elsewhere. After the session ended, she made her way to her private quarters on the station. The moment the door closed behind her, she activated the secure communication terminal. The holographic display showed the face of Commander Dae-hyun. He was in his 50s with gray hair cut short and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Defense Fleet, though most species didn't know that name. They only saw what humanity allowed them to see. I watched the session, Dae-hyun said before Jiwoo could speak. Vrexus was particularly insulting today. They all were, Jiwoo said, sitting down heavily. Commander, how much longer do we have to endure this? It's been 3 years. 3 years of being treated like we're stupid or weak or both. As long as it takes, Dae-hyun replied. His voice was calm, but she could hear the steel underneath. We came to the Assembly for peace and trade. That hasn't changed. Is it time? Jiwoo asked quietly. Should we show them the truth? Dae-hyun was silent for a moment. Not yet. The situation will present itself when the time is right. We don't want to intimidate them. We want to work with them. They won't work with us, Jiwoo said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. They think we're primitives playing at being civilized. Then they're wrong, Dae-hyun said simply. And eventually they'll realize that. Patience, Ambassador, patience. The communication ended. Jiwoo sat in the quiet of her quarters and wondered how much patience she had left. Around her, Unity Prime Station hummed with activity. Thousands of species living and working together in the heart of galactic civilization. Humanity was part of that now, but only on the edges, always on the outside looking in. The next morning, Jiwoo met with other human delegates in a private conference room. There were 5 of them total, representing different aspects of human interests in the assembly. Trade, science, culture, and security. "We should leave," said Delegate Hanbin, who handled security matters. He was younger than Jiwoo, passionate and quick to anger. "This is humiliating. They'll never respect us." "We didn't come here for respect," Jiwoo reminded him. "We came for trade and peaceful relations. Those things we have achieved even if they don't take us seriously in other areas." "But at what cost?" Hanbin demanded. "Every day we sit here and let them mock us, we lose credibility. Not just with them, but with our own people back home. They're asking why we tolerate this treatment." "Because the alternative is worse," said Delegate Yoonji, the eldest of the group. She had gray hair and had been a diplomat for 40 years. "If we reveal what we're truly capable of, we become a threat. The entire power structure of the assembly would shift overnight. Is that what we want? To be feared instead of dismissed?" The question hung in the air. No one had a good answer. Then the alarms began to sound. They were soft at first, then grew louder. A priority alert. Jiwoo's communication device vibrated urgently. She looked at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "Emergency assembly session," she said. "Something's happened." They rushed back to the Grand Assembly Hall. The massive chamber was already filling with delegates, all talking urgently. The holographic displays showed a star system in the outer reaches, a colony world called New Haven. The colony was under attack. Jiwoo watched the feeds with growing horror. Ships were bombarding the planet's surface. The colony's shields were failing. People were dying. High Counselor Vrexus called the session to order. His face was grim. "We have received a distress signal from New Haven Colony. They are under attack by Krath raiders. Preliminary reports show 30 battlecruisers in the system." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Krath were known throughout the galaxy as brutal and efficient killers. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. "What are our response options?" someone asked. "Limited," Vrexus admitted. "Our nearest fleet is 3 weeks away. By the time they arrive, New Haven will be gone." "Then we send a smaller force," another delegate suggested. "Something fast. Against 30 Krath cruisers? That would be suicide." The argument continued. Minutes passed. On the displays, New Haven's shields grew weaker. Jiwoo felt something cold settle in her chest. She looked at her fellow delegates. They all knew what she was thinking. Hanbin nodded slowly. Yoonji closed her eyes and took a deep breath. They had all known this moment might come. Jiwoo stood. Her voice cut through the arguing. "High Counselor, humanity can help." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Vrexus looked at her with something between pity and annoyance. "Ambassador, this is not the time for empty gestures. We need real military power. We have military assets in that sector," Jiwoo said clearly. "We can reach New Haven in 4 hours." Vrexus actually laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. "Assets? What assets?" "Your cargo ships? Ambassador, I appreciate your desire to help, but sending your people against the Krath would be murder." "With respect, High Counselor," Jiwoo said, and there was steel in her voice now. "You don't know what we have." For the first time, Vrexus looked uncertain. He studied Jiwoo's face, searching for something. Whatever he saw there made him pause. "You're serious," he said slowly. "Completely." Vrexus looked at the displays. New Haven had maybe 6 hours left. He looked back at Jiwoo. "Then you have my permission," he said. "But don't expect me to mourn when your people die for nothing." The Emergency Operations Center buzzed with controlled chaos. Dozens of species worked at holographic terminals, coordinating what little response they could manage. The main display showed New Haven Colony in terrible detail. Buildings collapsed under weapons fire. Ships bombarded the surface while the colony's shields flickered and died. Jiwoo stood to one side with her communication device pressed to her ear. She spoke quietly, urgently, in a language the translators didn't recognize. After a moment, she ended the call and approached the central command platform. High Counselor Vrexus was arguing with 3 other senior officials. Their voices carried across the room. "We cannot simply abandon them," a Karathi delegate said, her scales flashing red with agitation. "New Haven has over 17,000 colonists. And what would you have us do?" Vrexus demanded. Send our patrol ships to die? The Krath fleet has 30 battle cruisers. 30! Our nearest force capable of engaging them is weeks away. Then we negotiate, another official suggested weakly. The Krath don't negotiate. They take what they want and kill everyone else. You know this, Jiwoo cleared her throat. The officials turned to look at her. Vrexus's expression was not welcoming. Ambassador, if you're here to repeat your offer, save your breath. I gave you permission because I had no other choice, but I will not pretend it will make a difference. I've made the call, Jiwoo said simply. Authorization codes have been transmitted. Human forces are moving to intercept. How many ships? The Karathi delegate asked. Enough, Jiwoo replied. Vrexus made a dismissive gesture. Unless you have a fleet we don't know about, this is meaningless. The Krath will destroy whatever you send and continue their attack. Perhaps, Jiwoo said. Her voice was calm, but there was something in her eyes that made Vrexus pause. We'll know in 4 hours. The hours crawled by. New Haven's situation grew worse. The colony's main shield generator failed completely. Krath ground forces began landing on the surface. Reports came in of fighting in the streets, of civilian casualties mounting. Jiwoo watched it all from the operations center. She felt sick but forced herself to keep watching. This was what happened when people in power believed themselves untouchable, when they became so arrogant they forgot that others might surprise them. Delegate Hanbin stood beside her. Are they coming? He asked quietly. They're coming, Jiwoo confirmed. All of them? The response group stationed in Sector 7. Daehyun said it would be sufficient. Hanbin nodded slowly. He looked at the display showing the Krath fleet. 30 massive warships, each one bristling with weapons. I hope he's right. He's always right, Jiwoo said. Meanwhile, in the depths of space near New Haven, the Krath continued their assault. Their ships were enormous things, built for intimidation as much as warfare. Dark metal hulls covered in spikes and weapons. They had been attacking colonies on the edge of assembly space for years, and no one had been able to stop them. On the bridge of the Krath flagship, War Leader Thrak watched the colony burn with satisfaction. Another weak civilization crushed, another world plundered. The assembly talked and talked, but never acted. They were soft. They would protest and file complaints, but they would do nothing. War Leader, his sensor officer called out, I'm detecting anomalies in the outer system. What kind of anomalies? Unknown. Energy signatures appearing at multiple points. I don't know what they are, Thrak growled. Show me. The display changed. Small blips appeared across the outer system, growing stronger. Then one by one, ships materialized out of nowhere. They were dark gray, angular, covered in strange protrusions. Not large by Krath standards, but there were many of them. Assembly reinforcements? Thrak asked. Negative. The signatures don't match any known assembly design. Wait, I'm getting identification codes. They're claiming to be human? Thrak laughed. Humans, those primitives the assembly barely tolerates? This should be entertaining. How many ships? Still counting, War Leader. At least 40. No, 50. They're still uncloaking. The laughter died. 50 ships was more than Thrak expected, but it didn't matter. The Krath fleet was invincible. Let them come. We'll add their wreckage to the colony's debris. Back at Unity Prime, the operations center erupted in confusion. Every sensor in the system was going crazy. Ships were appearing out of nowhere near New Haven. Lots of ships. What am I looking at? Vrexus demanded. A technician worked frantically at his console. Unknown vessels, High Counselor. They just appeared. Advanced stealth systems beyond anything we've seen. They're broadcasting human identification codes. How many? 63 ships and counting, sir. Vrexus turned to stare at Jiwoo. The human ambassador stood calmly, her hands clasped in front of her. She met his gaze without flinching. You said you had assets in the sector? Vrexus said slowly. I did, Jiwoo confirmed. These are military warships. Advanced military warships. Where did they come from? They've been there the whole time, Jiwoo said. You just never asked the right questions. The whole time? Vrexus's voice rose. You've had a fleet hidden throughout assembly space for 3 years? Not hidden, Jiwoo corrected. Cloaked. There's a difference. And not just in assembly space. Everywhere humanity has interests. We believe in being prepared. The operations center fell silent. Every alien in the room stared at the human delegation. The implications were staggering. Humanity, the species they had dismissed as primitive, had been operating a massive military presence right under their noses. Undetected. Unsuspected. Why? The Karathi delegate asked. Why hide this from us? Because we came in peace, Jiwoo said. We joined the assembly to trade, to learn, to be part of the galactic community. Not to frighten anyone. Not to threaten anyone. We only wanted to be left alone to pursue peaceful relations. But you brought warships, Rexus said. Of course we did, Jiwoo replied. We're not stupid. Humanity learned long ago that the galaxy is a dangerous place. We hope for peace, but we prepare for war. Always. On the main display, the human fleet finished uncloaking. 73 vessels total. They formed up in battle formation with practiced precision. At the center of the formation was a ship larger than the others. Its identification code read Indomitable. A communication signal came through. A human voice speaking in clear galactic standard. This is Captain Minho of the Earth Defense Fleet Destroyer Indomitable. Krath vessels. You are ordered to cease your attack on New Haven Colony immediately and withdraw from this system. The response from the Krath was predictable. Thrak's voice boomed across the channel. Human insects. You dare give me orders? I will crush your pathetic ships and use your bodies to decorate my hull. There was a pause. When Minho spoke again, his voice was colder. Then you have chosen. The channel closed. Rexus leaned forward, studying the display. The Krath fleet was moving to engage the humans. 30 massive battlecruisers against 73 smaller human ships. The numbers favored the humans, but size mattered in space combat. Everyone knew that. Bigger ships meant bigger weapons, stronger shields, more armor. Everyone knew that. The Krath fleet opened fire first. Massive energy beams lanced across space toward the human ships. Plasma torpedoes followed, the kind of firepower that could crack a planet's crust. The human ships scattered. They moved fast, incredibly fast. Their formations broke apart and reformed in seconds. Most of the Krath fire missed completely. The shots that connected hit shields, that glowed bright blue and held. Then the humans fired. Back. What happened next made everyone in the operations center forget how to breathe. A lance of brilliant, white light shot from the Indomitable. It crossed the distance to a Krath cruiser in less than a second. The beam punched through the cruiser's shields like they weren't there. It burned through meters of armor plating. The ship's power core detonated and the cruiser exploded in a flash of fire that lit up the entire system. One shot. One kill. Then the rest of the human fleet opened fire. High Counselor Vrexus stood frozen, watching the display. His mouth was open. His 4 eyes were wide. Around him, the operations center had gone completely silent. Everyone stared at the screen in shock as humanity revealed what they truly were. What they had always been. The laughter had died. The mockery had ended. And the first shot had barely begun to echo across the stars. The space around New Haven Colony transformed into hell. Captain Minho sat in the command chair of the Indomitable and watched his tactical display with calm eyes. Around him, his bridge crew worked in perfect silence. No shouting, no panic. Just professional efficiency as they executed the battle plan. Target destroyed, his weapons officer reported. Krath Cruiser 7 is gone, acknowledged. Weapons, you are free to engage targets of opportunity. All ships execute pattern Delta 4. The human fleet moved, not like a group of individual ships, but like a single organism. They broke into smaller groups, each one targeting a different section of the Krath fleet. They used the debris from the destroyed cruiser as cover, appearing and disappearing behind chunks of metal and fire. The Krath tried to respond. They fired everything they had, energy weapons that could melt mountains, missiles with warheads powerful enough to crack moons, railguns firing projectiles at impossible speeds. The firepower was immense, overwhelming, the kind of assault that had broken dozens of other species. It wasn't enough. Human ships danced between the weapons' fire. Their engines pushed them to speeds that shouldn't be possible for vessels that size. They twisted and turned, their pilots making maneuvers that would kill any organic crew if not for the inertial dampeners humanity had perfected decades ago. And when the Krath weapons did hit, the human shields held. Blue energy fields flared bright but didn't break. The few shots that got through hit armor that had been designed by engineers who assumed every enemy would be stronger, faster, and more advanced than humanity. The armor held too. Then the humans fired back. The Indomitable's main gun fired again. Another Krath cruiser died. This time it took 3 seconds instead of 1, but the result was the same. The cruiser's shields failed, its hull tore apart, and its crew died before they could even understand what was happening. Around the Indomitable, other human ships opened fire. They used weapons the Krath had never seen before, railguns that fired solid projectiles at relativistic speeds, hitting with the force of nuclear weapons, laser systems that didn't just burn through armor but vaporized it, missile swarms that moved like they were alive, hunting their targets with artificial intelligence that predicted every evasive maneuver. "They're trying to retreat," the tactical officer called out. Minho checked his display. Sure enough, 6 Krath cruisers were breaking formation and turning away from the planet. They were running. "Pursuit Group 3, intercept and destroy. No survivors." "Acknowledged," came the response from Lieutenant Borum, commanding a squadron of destroyers. Her ships broke away from the main engagement and accelerated after the fleeing Krath vessels. The chase didn't last long. The human destroyers were faster, much faster. They caught the Krath cruisers before they could even reach the edge of the system. The cruisers died one by one, their engines exploding under focused fire, their hulls cracking open to the void of space. Back at Unity Prime, the operations center watched in complete silence. The only sounds were the soft beeps and hums of the equipment and the occasional gasp from someone who couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. High Counselor Vrexus stood like a statue. His 4 eyes tracked the battle, watching as the Krath fleet was systematically destroyed. His people had been the dominant military power in the Assembly for centuries. The Voth battle fleets were legendary, and yet watching the humans fight, Vrexus realized something terrible. The Voth would lose against humanity. Badly. "How long has this been going on?" someone asked. The technician checked his console. 7 minutes since first engagement, sir. 7 minutes. In 7 minutes, the human fleet had destroyed 15 Krath cruisers. 15 ships that had terrorized the outer colonies for years. Gone. Just gone. Ambassador Jiwoo stood quietly to one side, watching the display. Her face showed no emotion, but inside she felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that humanity was finally showing its true capabilities. Sadness that it had come to this, that they couldn't just be partners and equals without first proving they were dangerous. Delegate Hanbin leaned close to her. "We'll never be able to go back," he whispered. "After this, everything changes." "I know," Jiwoo replied softly. "But at least 17,000 people will live to see tomorrow." On the battlefield, War Leader Thrak watched his fleet die and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. Real, genuine fear. "All ships concentrate fire on the lead human vessel," he ordered. "Everything we have." The remaining Krath cruisers obeyed. They stopped trying to engage the entire human fleet and focused their weapons on a single target. The Indomitable. The combined firepower of 20 Krath battle cruisers struck the human destroyer. Energy beams converged on its shields. Missiles detonated against its hull. The weapon's fire was so intense it created a sphere of light that temporarily blinded the sensors. When the light faded, the Indomitable was still there. Its shields glowed red-hot but held. Scorch marks covered its hull, but the armor hadn't broken. The ship was damaged, yes, but it was very much still in the fight. Captain Minho studied his damage reports calmly. "Forward shields at 40%. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7 sealed. Engineering reports power systems at 92%. Should we fall back, sir?" his first officer asked. "No, all ships, this is Indomitable. I'm designating the Krath flagship as priority target. Converge and fire at will." The human fleet responded instantly. Every ship that could bring weapons to bear focused on Thrak's flagship. The massive Krath vessel found itself under attack from 30 different directions at once. Its shields failed first. They had been designed to handle fire from 3 or 4 ships at most. Not 30. Not weapons that cut through energy fields like they were made of paper. The shields collapsed in sections, leaving the hull exposed. Then the armor began to fail. Railgun rounds punched through the thick plating. Lasers burned deep into the ship's interior. Missiles found their way through the gaps and detonated inside critical systems. On the flagship's bridge, Thrak watched his ship die around him. Fires burned. Crew members screamed. The deck tilted as internal gravity failed. "Damage report," he demanded. "Power core failing, War Leader." We have minutes before cascade failure. Then we die with honor, Thrak said. All weapons fire until we cannot fire anymore. The flagship's remaining weapons fired desperately. A few shots hit human ships, but they weren't enough to change the battle's outcome. Nothing could change it now. The Indomitable fired one last time. Its main gun sent a lance of pure energy straight through the flagship's core. The massive ship exploded from the inside out, taking war leader Thrak and his entire crew with it. The remaining Krath cruisers broke completely. Without their war leader, without any hope of victory, they scattered. Some tried to fight, some tried to run. It didn't matter. The human fleet hunted them down methodically, efficiently, without mercy or hesitation. 14 minutes after the first shot, the last Krath cruiser exploded in a ball of fire. The battle was over. The human fleet regrouped near New Haven Colony. They formed a defensive perimeter around the planet, while smaller ships descended to help with rescue operations. Medical teams beamed down. Engineers began helping repair the damaged shield generators. Food and supplies were distributed to the survivors. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Minho opened a channel to Unity Prime. His face appeared on screens across the Assembly Operations Center. This is Captain Minho of the destroyer Indomitable to Unity Prime Command. New Haven Colony is secure. Krath fleet has been completely destroyed. We are beginning rescue and recovery operations. He paused, checking a report from his tactical officer. Casualty report. New Haven Colony suffered approximately 800 civilian deaths before our arrival. Human fleet casualties. 0 deaths, 3 ships with moderate damage, 17 ships with minor damage. All ships remain combat capable. Another pause. When Minho spoke again, his voice was calm and professional. But there was an edge to it that made everyone listening pay very close attention. For the record, this engagement was handled by a standard response group. What you witnessed today represents approximately 8% of humanity's total military capability in this sector alone. Should the Assembly require additional assistance in the future, we have significantly more resources available. The operations center erupted, not with cheers or celebration, but with shock and fear, and a dozen different voices all trying to speak at once. 8%. This devastating display of military power was only 8% of what humanity had in just one sector. High Counselor Vrexus stared at the screen, at the human captain who had just destroyed an entire Krath fleet without losing a single crew member. His hands trembled slightly. Across the room, Ambassador Jiwoo caught his eye. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply looked at him with an expression that said everything that needed to be said. We tried to warn you. The Grand Assembly Hall had never been so full. Every delegate was present. Every seat was taken. Species that normally skipped routine sessions had sent representatives. The air hummed with tension and dozens of different languages as translation devices struggled to keep up. Ambassador Jiwoo sat in the human delegation section and waited. She knew what was coming. They all did. The last 48 hours had been chaos, emergency meetings, frantic intelligence briefings, heated arguments behind closed doors. The entire assembly had been turned upside down by the revelation of humanity's true military capabilities. High Counselor Vrexus stood at the central podium. He looked tired. His usual confidence had been replaced by something harder to read. Uncertainty, perhaps, or fear. This emergency session is called to order, Vrexus announced. His voice echoed across the chamber. We are here to discuss the recent events at New Haven Colony and the larger implications of what we have learned about humanity's military presence within assembly space. Immediately, a dozen delegates signaled to speak. Vrexus selected one, a tall alien with gray skin and multiple arms. The assembly has been deceived, the delegate declared. Humanity maintained a secret military fleet throughout our territory. This is a violation of trust and possibly of assembly protocols. How do we know these ships aren't a threat to us? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jiwoo remained silent, letting them talk. She had been advised to stay quiet until formally called upon. Another delegate spoke. We owe humanity a debt. They saved 17,000 lives at New Haven. Without their intervention, those colonists would be dead. True, a third delegate countered, but they also lied by omission. For 3 years, we believed humanity was a minor military power. Now we learn they have advanced stealth technology and weapons that exceed anything in our own fleets. What else haven't they told us? The debate continued. Some delegates were grateful. Others were angry. A few were terrified. The common thread was that everyone felt betrayed. Humanity had let them believe a lie. Finally, Vrexus raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Jiwoo, the Council formally requests that you address these concerns. We want answers. Jiwoo stood and made her way to the speaker's platform. Every eye in the chamber followed her. She could feel the weight of their stares. Fear, anger, curiosity, gratitude all mixed together. High Counselor, members of the Assembly, she began. I understand your concerns. Let me address them directly. She activated a holographic display. It showed a timeline of humanity's contact with the Assembly. When humanity first discovered faster-than-light travel, we knew we would encounter other species. We didn't know if those species would be friendly or hostile, so we prepared for both possibilities. We built diplomatic corps and trade networks. We also built defensive fleets. The display changed, showing human warships. When we joined the Assembly, we came in good faith. We wanted peace. We wanted trade. We wanted to learn from you. But we are not fools. We kept our defensive capabilities ready because the galaxy is dangerous. As New Haven proved, you lied to us. Someone shouted from the audience. No, Jiwoo said firmly. We did not lie. We simply didn't volunteer information you never asked for. When the Assembly reviewed our application for membership, they asked about our trade capabilities, our scientific achievements, our cultural values. No one asked about our military strength. No one wanted to know. She looked directly at Vrexus. You assumed we were weak because our ships looked different. Because we were new to the galaxy. Because it was easier to dismiss us than to take us seriously. That's not deception on our part. That's arrogance on yours. The chamber fell silent. No one had ever spoken to Vrexus that way in public. Vrexus's face darkened. You dare accuse this council of arrogance? Yes, Jiwoo said without hesitation. Because it's true. Humanity has attended every session. We have followed every protocol. We have tried repeatedly to contribute to Assembly operations, and every single time we were dismissed as primitives, mocked, told to focus on trade and leave the important work to our betters. She gestured to the holographic display. Yesterday I stood in this chamber and offered humanity's help at New Haven. High Counselor Vrexus laughed in my face. He said he wouldn't mourn when our people died for nothing. Those were his exact words. Vrexus said nothing. He couldn't deny it. The recording existed. Everyone had seen it. So no, we didn't volunteer information about our military capabilities. We came for peace, not to intimidate. But we are not weak. We have never been weak. You simply chose not to see us clearly. Jiwoo returned to her seat. The chamber erupted in discussion again. But this time the tone was different. Less accusatory. More thoughtful. Some delegates were nodding. Others looked ashamed. Commander Daehyun appeared on the holographic display. He had been granted permission to address the Assembly remotely from Earth. Members of the Assembly, I am Commander Daehyun of the Earth Defense Fleet. I have been asked to provide details about humanity's military capabilities. I will do so in the interest of transparency. The presentation that followed was comprehensive. Daehyun showed ship designs, weapon systems, defensive technology. He explained how human stealth fields worked, bending light and sensor waves around the ships. He detailed the railgun technology that could fire projectiles at speeds approaching light. He described the energy weapons that had cut through Krath armor like paper. Most importantly, he explained the philosophy behind it all. Humanity's military doctrine is built on a simple premise, Daehyun said. We prepare for the worst-case scenario in every situation. Our ships are over-engineered because we assumed we would face enemies with superior technology. Our weapons are powerful because we planned for opponents with stronger defenses. Our training is intense because we expected every fight to be difficult. He paused, looking directly at the camera. What you saw at New Haven is what we consider standard defensive operations. We didn't use our heavy warships. We didn't deploy our strategic weapons. That was a routine patrol group responding to a distress call. The chamber was deathly quiet. How many ships does humanity have? Vrexus asked. That information is classified, Daehyun replied. But I can tell you that every major human colony has defensive fleets. Every trade route is patrolled. Every system with human presence has military assets either stationed there or able to respond within hours. Why so many? Someone asked. Who are you expecting to fight? Anyone, Daehyun said simply. Everyone. We didn't know what we would find in the galaxy. We still don't know what's out there in unexplored space. So we prepared to defend ourselves against any threat. It's how humanity survived on our own world. And it's how we plan to survive out here. Dr. Soman appeared next to Daehyun on the display. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but her credentials were impressive. Lead researcher at Earth's Advanced Weapons Division. I want to address something, Soman said. The weapons humanity used at New Haven were not designed for aggression. They were designed for efficiency. Every system on our ship serves a defensive purpose. The stealth technology lets us avoid conflicts. The weapons end threats quickly to minimize casualties. Even our tactics prioritize surgical strikes over overwhelming force. She pulled up schematics. Everything we build is meant to protect, to defend. Yes, we are capable of great destruction, but we built that capability hoping we would never need to use it. We wanted to join the galactic community as partners, not conquerors. The presentations continued for another hour. By the end, every species in the assembly understood the truth. Humanity wasn't just a military power. They were possibly the strongest military power in known space. And they had been all along. As the session ended, smaller species approached the human delegation privately. The Karathi delegate, a representative from the Pel Confederacy, 2 ambassadors from minor systems near the Outer Rim. Their message was the same. They wanted defense treaties, trade agreements that included military protection. They had been vulnerable for so long, pushed around by larger powers. Now they saw an opportunity to be safe. Jiwoo took their names and promised to forward their requests to Earth. She was polite, professional, but inside she felt a deep weariness. This was exactly what humanity had tried to avoid. They didn't want to be feared. They didn't want smaller species clinging to them for protection. They just wanted to be equals. As the last delegates filed out, Vrexus approached. He looked older somehow. The events of the past 2 days had aged him. Ambassador, he said quietly. I owe you an apology, Jiwoo studied him. Do you? Yes, I underestimated your people. Worse, I insulted them. My arrogance almost cost thousands of lives at New Haven. Almost, Jiwoo agreed. But not quite. Vrexus nodded slowly. What happens now? That depends, Jiwoo said. On all of us. On whether the Assembly can accept humanity as true partners. On whether we can move past these misconceptions and work together. Before Vrexus could respond, alarms began blaring again. Both of them turned to the nearest display. A priority message from Assembly Intelligence. Jiwoo read it and felt ice form in her stomach. The Krath attack on New Haven hadn't been random. It had been a probe, a test of Assembly defenses. Intelligence had intercepted communications showing the truth. I need to make a call, Jiwoo said. She left Vrexus standing in the corridor and returned to her private quarters. The call connected immediately. Commander Daehyun appeared on the screen, along with several other faces. The Joint Chiefs of the Earth Defense Fleet, the Secretary of Defense. Even the Prime Minister was present. I've seen the intelligence reports, Daehyun said before Jiwoo could speak. The Krath are coming. The Assembly wants our help. Yes, Jiwoo confirmed. And what do you think we should do? The Prime Minister asked. Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. These are the people who dismissed us, who mocked us, who treated us like children for 3 years. Part of me wants to tell them no, to let them face this alone and see what happens when they don't have humanity to save them. But, Daehyun prompted. But that's not who we are, Jiwoo said. We didn't join the Assembly to be petty or vengeful. We joined because we wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We wanted to prove that humanity had learned from its mistakes, that we could be better than our violent past. She looked at each face on the screen. If we turn our backs now, we're no better than the empires that conquered Earth centuries ago. We become exactly what we were trying to escape. But if we help, if we fight for people who insulted us, then we prove something more important than military strength. We prove that we have character. The Secretary of Defense spoke up. The Krath fleet is massive. Even with our full military deployment, this will be a real fight. We'll take casualties. People will die. I know, Jiwoo said quietly. Then you also know this decision will define how the galaxy sees humanity for generations, the Prime Minister said. If we fight and win, we become protectors, guardians. That's a heavy responsibility. And if we don't fight, Daehyun added, billions die. Entire civilizations are wiped out. Can we live with that? The Prime Minister was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Commander Daehyun, mobilize the fleet. All of it. We're going to war. The next few days were chaos of a different kind. Human warships began appearing throughout assembly space. Not the small patrol groups that had fought at New Haven. The real fleet. Dreadnoughts that made craft cruisers look like toys. Carriers launching thousands of fighters. Orbital weapons platforms being towed into defensive positions. Supply ships. Medical frigates. Everything humanity had built for war. All of it converging on the Assembly's core systems. The Assembly watched in awe and terror. Some species had been spacefaring for thousands of years. They had never seen a military force like this. The sheer scale was overwhelming. How many ships? Someone asked during a briefing. Over 3,000 combat vessels, Daehyun reported. Plus support craft. We're establishing defensive lines at key systems. The craft will have to go through us to reach the core worlds. Where did you build all of this? Rexus asked. He wasn't being accusatory anymore. Just genuinely curious everywhere, Daehyun said. Every major human colony has shipyards. Every mining operation feeds materials to our industrial complexes. We've been building for decades, preparing for threats we hoped would never come. The Assembly contributed what they could. Their fleets joined the defensive lines. Smaller than the human forces, less advanced but present, willing to fight for their homes, willing to stand alongside the species they had once dismissed. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the tactical display. His ship was now part of Battle Group 7, positioned to defend a crucial trade hub. Around him, dozens of other human ships held formation. Beyond them, assembly vessels from a dozen different species maintained their own positions. It's strange, his first officer said, fighting alongside people who laughed at us. They're not laughing now, Minho replied. And when this is over, they'll never laugh at humanity again. But that's not why we're here. We're here because it's the right thing to do. High Counselor Vrexus stood in his command center aboard the Voth flagship. For the first time in his long career, he wasn't in charge of the fleet. That honor had gone to Commander Daehyun by unanimous vote of the Assembly Council. The human commander had proven his capabilities at New Haven. More importantly, he had the tools to win. Vrexus had swallowed his pride and accepted a position as Daehyun's second-in-command. It was humbling, but necessary. Commander, Vrexus said over the command channel, I want you to know something. Yes, Counselor, I was wrong about your people. Completely wrong, and I'm grateful you're willing to fight for us despite that. Daehyun's image appeared on the screen. We're not fighting for you, Counselor. We're fighting with you. There's a difference. Dr. Summon worked in a secure lab deep within Earth's orbital defense station. Around her, teams of scientists made final preparations. The weapon systems humanity had used at New Haven were powerful, yes. But they had more, much more, systems they had never tested in real combat. Technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. She hoped they wouldn't need any of it. But if they did, humanity would use everything at their disposal to protect the innocent. That's what separated them from conquerors like the Krath. Humanity's weapons were tools of last resort, not first choice. The Krath fleet arrived exactly when intelligence predicted. Thousands of ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They were massive, crude, built for intimidation and destruction. They had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. Overwhelming force. No mercy. But this time they weren't facing frightened colonies or small patrol groups. They were facing the combined might of the Galactic Assembly. And at the heart of that might, holding the line, was humanity. All ships, this is Commander Daehyun. Remember why we're here? We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight to prove that civilization is worth defending. And we fight to show the galaxy what humanity truly stands for. Not conquest, not domination, but the simple belief that every life has value. Every culture deserves to exist. Good luck to all of you. Hold the line, the channel closed. Across the defensive fleet, human and alien crews prepared for battle. Fear was present, yes, but also determination, unity, purpose. Ambassador Jiwoo watched from Unity Prime Station. She couldn't fight. She wasn't a soldier, but she could witness what happened next. What her people were willing to sacrifice for strangers who had treated them with contempt. Delegate Hanbin stood beside her. Do you think we'll win? I don't know, Jiwoo admitted. The Krath are strong. Numerous. This will be the hardest fight humanity has ever faced. But we'll face it together. Hanbin said, gesturing to the display showing the mixed fleet. Human and alien, side by side. Yes, Jiwoo agreed. That's what matters. Not that we're the strongest, but that we chose to use that strength to protect others. That's what makes us different. The Krath fleet began its advance. Weapons charged, shields powered up. The invasion had begun. On the Indomitable, Captain Minho watched them come. He thought about his crew, about the families back on Earth waiting for them to return, about the civilians on assembly worlds who had no idea their lives hung in the balance. Weapons ready, Captain, his officer reported. Hold position, Minho ordered. Let them come to us. We chose this ground. We'll defend it. The distance closed. Thousands of kilometers. Then hundreds. The sensors locked on. Targeting computers calculated firing solutions. Across the entire defensive line, human and alien ships prepared to unleash everything they had. Minho took a deep breath. All weapons fire. Space lit up with weapons fire. Thousands of beams, missiles, projectiles crossing the void. The battle for the assembly, for civilization itself, had begun. And somewhere in the heart of it all, humanity proved what they had always known about themselves. That strength without wisdom is tyranny. That power without purpose is meaningless. That the true measure of any civilization isn't how well they can destroy but what they choose to protect. The galaxy had laughed at humanity. They had dismissed them as primitives. They had mocked their ships and questioned their worth, but when the first shot rang out at New Haven, the laughter had died. And when humanity stood on the front lines, willing to die for people who had insulted them, something more important than respect was born. Trust, unity, hope. The battle would rage for days. Lives would be lost, sacrifices would be made. But humanity had already won the most important victory. They had proven that they were more than just another military power. They were guardians, protectors, friends, and the galaxy would never forget what humanity chose to be when they had the power to be anything at all. The future was uncertain. The battle was just beginning. But for the first time since humanity joined the stars, they weren't alone, and neither was anyone else.